Minister, the lack of forethought shown by you and your department regarding if schools had to close was very disappointing. There should always have been a plan B in place if schools had to close. Like, you had 9 months to organise this, and instead we had half-baked plans cobbled together over the course of 24 hours, which collapsed just as quickly. In such a context, a letter yesterday to parents in which you played the blame game for schools not reopening is, in my view, an inappropriate use of communication with school children and their parents to make political statements. School staff have been working extremely hard to provide remote learning on such short notice, and there has been a lack of clear guidance and supports for teachers. So I hope that you learned from recent weeks and you are now urgently planning on how schools can reopen safely as soon as possible. Minister, for me, priority number one in terms of education must be with children with special educational needs, and I do welcome the measure that you've just announced, that special schools and special classes within primary schools will reopen on the 21st. Last week when the announcement was made that special schools and special classes were to open on the 11th of January for students with special educational needs, I think the students concerned and their families were delighted that for once their needs were being taken into account and prioritised without them having to fight tooth and nail for that to happen. Because we all know how badly affected they were by last year's closures, and many of them received little or no support for the 3 months of school closure. Children experienced academic and social and emotional regression and took weeks to settle back into school in September. So when the announcement came then that schools were not going to open, they were absolutely devastated. So I do welcome the fact that they will open now, but I will ask you to maybe provide clarity on this. There are 30,000 students with additional needs in our school, and approximately 1/3 of those, possibly slightly more, are in mainstream classes in mainstream schools, and I would like to know, are ASD units going to be opened and what exact supports are being provided for the children in our mainstream schools? Mainstream schools in other jurisdictions are open to cater for students with special educational needs. This is happening in the North, it's happening in Britain, it's happening across Europe, and I think it really needs to happen here. It's also vital that you engage with the HSE and the National Immunisation Advisory Committee to see if school staff can be considered for a higher group on the priority list for the Covid-19 vaccine. Staff in special education urgently need clarity on when they will receive the vaccine, given the importance of their role. Minister, I also want to touch on the Leaving Cert. Leaving Cert students have been left in limbo by you and your department for far too long. It's been an extremely difficult 12 months for sixth-year students. They've enormous learning time lost in fifth year, and now the chaos of the government U-turns of the past week to contend with. And for months now, you've been asked by my colleague, Deputy O'Leary, to lay out the contingency plans in place for the Leaving Cert class of 2021. And it is disgraceful that you have yet to do so, and the sixth-year students across the country have been let down so badly by you and your department. They've been given no clarity and they haven't been listened to. So, Minister, I urge you to listen to the students and to take seriously their concerns. The mock exams are coming up in the next few weeks. The deadline for some projects are this week and next. Oral and practical exams are also set to take place in the very near future, and students need clarity on if and when and how these will go ahead. Any project deadlines due this month, I think, need to be extended, and that is the least that can be done to ease the pressure on the Leaving Cert class. If you had spoken to the students, you would know that the changes that have been made to the Leaving Cert papers this year go nowhere near enough. Much more radical changes are required at the very minimum. And perhaps much more than that, you need to take seriously the level of learning loss that the current 6 years have experienced. They lost 3 months last year and now this month. And I know from speaking with students that it has been profoundly difficult for them to catch up. Minister, you need to be transparent and honest with students, and you must accept at this stage that there is a question over the provision of a traditional Leaving Cert this year. It has not been a traditional 12 months for sixth-year students. And this isn't an issue that can drift into the spring. Students are calling out for clarity now. So I hope your department is exploring all the options, including those put forward by the students themselves. This is urgent, and you must communicate with students in a clear and considered way your contingency plans for this year's Leaving Certificate, and I think it's the least these students deserve. Minister, I have a number of questions. As well as special schools, many children who are badly struggling at this time will not benefit from the special schools, so just if you could provide clarity on units and students in mainstream. And also, could you that all SNAs and staff who must be in close proximity to children get surgical grade masks, and will you ensure that high-risk staff are given the option for remote work and matched off with children whose family want them to learn remotely? Thank you.
Louise O'Reilly.
Just in the first instance, I thank the Deputy for the issues that she has highlighted. I would certainly have to beg to differ with her on many of the points that she has made. In the first instance, she makes reference to a lack of planning. Absolutely and utterly untrue. You would be, I would hope, personally aware of the efforts of schools presently in terms of ensuring that children are catered for in present circumstances in terms of remote and online learning, and they are in a position to do that because of the extensive planning and engagement that has taken place to provide clarity and guidelines to schools in relation to that. And could I say, in relation to all of the guidance for remote and distant learning, guidelines for continuity of learning were issued to schools earlier in the school term, and then agreed procedures by all of the partners in education were issued to schools. So there has been intense discussion and negotiation and engagement with everybody in terms of education and providing consistent planning and guidelines for situations in which we currently find ourselves. And schools have adapted very flexibly, very resiliently in terms of any short-term closures that they have had at any stage between September and December, and indeed they are doing likewise now. And there is also agreement where there is considerable oversight from the department in terms of how schools are faring in this respect. So I would reject out of hand, and I think you do a disservice to the partners in education, and I include the teaching unions, the managerial bodies, the parents, the students, when you reject the amount of time and effort they have put into place in terms of planning for closures as which we currently face. Their work has been exemplary, and I want to acknowledge their cooperation. In terms of special schools, yes, indeed, we have made the announcement in terms of special schools. You specifically raise the issue of special classes and children in mainstream. Children in special classes are to be facilitated, and equally so children in mainstream schools are also to be facilitated under this current plan. And again, I want to acknowledge the incredible engagement of all of the partners in education to achieve a shared objective to move towards the 21st of January to facilitate the opening of the special schools, the special classes and children in mainstream schools, and indeed the provision also will be made for vulnerable students. As regards the Leaving Certificate, and I again take issue with your reference to if I had spoken with students. I deal with students on an ongoing basis. Indeed, students are very much anchored in all of the discussions that we have in the department in terms of any planning that we would do, whether it's in terms of schools reopening or whether indeed it's planning in terms of exams. And issue are represented at all of those engagements. Indeed, I have spoken on a personal basis with them on a number of occasions. I've indeed also spoken with them at the stakeholder arrangement. I spoke with their president yesterday, Reuben Murray. But could I also say to you, I am very well placed to engage with students. I have taught all my life in the education sector. I deal on an ongoing daily basis with students. I'm familiar with their needs, and I would reject absolutely the suggestion that students are not involved as part of the partners in education process. They most certainly are. Could I say, in terms of, you make a reference to projects and all of that, guidance has issued in terms of extended deadlines for projects, and might I add in relation to that, the extension that is now currently available in terms of projects is available because of the extensive planning and the extensive work and the extensive engagement with all of the partners in education, that there would be leeway given in terms of dates for projects to be completed. That leeway was given as students returned to school in September, and we are availing of that leeway now, again as a consequence of considerable planning. You make reference then to issues of IR issues in terms of teachers and guidance and SNAs and public health. Could I just say, in terms of all of the conditions, work conditions for those who work in the school community, and obviously for our students who attend within the school community, all of those measures are guided by public health advice. At any stage where Public Health asked us to change our procedures or change our processes, we have done that, whether it was in respect of masks or whether it was in respect of school transport or whatever, and we will consistently do that. So all measures that need to be in place to facilitate any aspect of the running of schools for any members of our staff will continue to be in place and will continue to be flexibly added to or changed or amended as required by the direction of Public Health. Gurmagov.